Susan Finch here, your host for All Volunteer, All Heart from Binky Patrol. And today I'm welcoming Liz from Quilting for Community, and I am really happy to have her here. Liz, we run into people all the time through our volunteers, our chapter leaders, our sponsors. And when your organization came by, I looked it up. I thought, oh, this is such a perfect match for us because we had on the ladies from Fabric Cafe. And Fabric Cafe is, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they are all about teaching people how to quilt and getting younger people back into sewing and quilting because they've seen a resurgence in younger people wanting to make use of things that exist rather than always having to start new. It's like, how can we repurpose these things? And so people are taking up sewing again. My own son has a sewing machine with him at all times at college and helps all his friends mend and hem. And tell me about you and Quilting for Community.
Well, it's very interesting. Quilting was never anything that was on my bucket list. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I've seen Amish quilts. We spent a lot of time in Dutch country and Lancaster, PA. But to learn how to quilt was definitely not anything that I was interested in. What happened was there was a woman, Miss Leslie Dwiggins. She said we were at a party at her house and she had quilts hanging up, and my sister and I said, oh, these are nice. And like quilters do, if you show any interest, oh, I can teach you. And I said, sure, but I think I wasn't really very interested, and I just thought that was sweet. But fast forward maybe a couple months later, my family found out my dad was really ill and like not coming back from it ill. It was just going to get worse and worse. And we took that. It was such a blow and such a traumatic moment for my entire family because we had to figure out what we're going to do with that, what we're going to do with mom. And all of us are all over the country. So I want to say I found Miss Leslie again, and I thought I needed to find something to do because I just found myself in this horrible headspace. I just could not unravel myself from all the emotion and all the things. And she could have taught me how to paint landscapes on grains of sand, and I probably would have taken her up on that offer as well. But it was quilting. Quilting was her thing. And she started showing me all kinds of things. Art quilting is what really got me interested. And all of a sudden, applique and fabric collage, all of the fabric in the world made sense and had purpose to me because I was one of those people who thought quilting was just something for old people. It was old fashioned. It was country fare. And also fabric. There was ugly fabric in the world. And why are they making these things?
There's lots of ugly fabric in the world.
When she said to me, you can make these drawings of your fat walruses. I was drawing these fat walruses and I showed her and she said, you can make that into a quilt. And I just was really like, really? And we just started cutting and pasting and sewing and cutting and pasting and sewing. And I remember my sister saying, how many fat walruses are you going to make? And I said, I don't know, but I think I found my thing. And I could not learn fast enough. I could not, I mean, it was day and night, searching up things on YouTube, trying everything, every single thing that I could, until maybe several months later, she introduced me to a group of quilters who were making quilts to donate. And again, my world was just like, whoa, what? And people were coming in with fabric to donate. And I was just like, what? I know about canned goods and gently used clothing, but fabric? And everything that they taught me, I just would come back the next week with two. And then I'd say, give me something else, teach me something else. Long story short, that little shop closed. And I want to say maybe at the same time they were closing, Dad was on his deathbed. So we went home to be with Dad. Dad passed. We came back to LA and the shop was closed. And I was left with, there has to be somewhere where people can come, learn, try this and see what it does for them, because it did it for me. I was a regular person. I was not a quilter. I was not interested in quilting. So if this could bring me some sense of peace and healing, could it do the same for others if they had the opportunity? They didn't
Hmm.
have to pay for anything. They didn't have to bring anything. They just brought themselves. Is this possible? And it started off as that little idea, and then that idea sort of, I went to my local sewing machine shop and told them the idea, and they said, "Yeah, you use our little, our back classroom once a week and $10 a month or something." It was some ridiculous number that they gave us. And now I have to tell you, I was really afraid because I was brand new. Like, who am I to come up with, we're going to come up with some nonprofit organization around quilting. And when I'm around people who've been doing it for 30, 40 years, there was fear, but there was also the vision that would not leave me alone. Like, it would not leave me alone. I would be up at night and I would pull out my daughter's crafting paper and I'd paste it on the wall. And I'm like, what is it? Is it sewing machines and design wall and pressing stations? And all of a sudden, it just, all the things started coming, a very big picture. So when the sewing machine shop said, you can use our space, my initial thought was, well, this isn't big enough.
I love it. Oh, that's great.
But then something said, well, this is a start, baby steps. And we started using social media, mostly next door,
Hmm.
to reach out to folks. And it was to empty nesters and stay-at-home parents. And it was Friday mornings. And we would do it once a week. And first week we had 4 people. The next week we had 2. The following week we had 6. The next week we had 0. And Miss Leslie said, oh gosh, this is what I was afraid of. And I said, there's nothing to be afraid of. We're just experimenting. Let's see what
Right.
works, what sticks. And one day turned into 2 days, and then 2 days turned into, now we're working with high school students. And all of this is between 2018 and 2019. And when we were heading, I think our 1-year anniversary of which would have been 2020, we were going to have this big festival on the street, quilt walk, quilts everywhere.
Quilt walk. I love it.
People, it was so, there were so many people involved. I couldn't believe that it had grown so big. I could not take any more goodness. It was so good for a whole year and a half. And then everything got shut down for COVID. And I was like, what is it all for? But we, like everyone else, we kind of pivoted and we thrived during that time.
Yeah.
It was a strange thing, but we thrived. And someone heard about our story and said, we want to support you. And they gave us a grant to continue. And I was just like, but how? Like, everyone's at home. And I want to say for the fall of 2020 is when we came up with this idea of, what if we created a safe space for people to come and learn? They had their social distancing and everything was at one station. They're pressing, they're cutting, they're sewing, everything was right there. And we only took 4 people per session. So we still do that to this day. Now we still have a reservation system to this day. We don't just do 4, now we do 6 plus. But it was the beginning, and people were also really hungry for something. And to know that they're making something that would then be donated to hospice, shelters,
Hmm.
children, hospitals, it took a lot of the pressure off of like getting it right or being perfect.
Right.
It was just like, come help us make something that we're going to give to someone else. And that really opened up a lot for people who had never even considered the craft. So that's the story. My life has changed through just grief and all the things that have all the beauty that's come from the grief and all the people that we've met who are also going through things and are finding solace in community.
Oh, I love this. And it's, we have a lot of crossover in our stories.
Mm,
When I started Binky Patrol, I didn't know how to sew or quilt. I sewed at home ec in 7th grade.
mm-hmm.
That was the last time until I was about 29.
Right.
And my mom wanted to make blankets. And so when I came up with Binky Patrol, it was a 4-hour process. And we
Mm-hmm.
got 5 volunteers. But they all laughed at me about how I sew. I mean, they laughed, and I was okay with that. They're like,
Right.
"Why are you making it that way? Who taught you that?" So I've done nothing but learn from others as well. But the whole idea, our first summer after, well, we started in June, so that summer we had a bank that opened up a room on their second floor and allowed us to have a quilting bee.
Mm.
that was drop in. It was a drop in. So it was always there when the bank was open, that door was open and anybody could
Right.
go.
Yeah.
And that's where our community building started.
I have to tell you, like once we started the design center where people could come and they reserved their time, we got that grant money and we were like, this is only going to get us for about 6 months. And it was going to help the sewing machine shop too. He sold all his sewing machines during COVID. He had a huge showroom space that was empty. And so I said, what if we took this money, give it to you, and then we set up a bigger operation in the showroom space. Do it for 6 months, at least it'll help you. And then if we can't get further, fine. 6 months turned into 18 months until we finally got our own brick and mortar.
Right.
And so now we have our own space and we get to be there, all week long if we want to. Right now we're there 5 days a week and we have classes all day long and we have open sew and we have evening classes that are starting
Wow.
to pop up and people are hungry for it. And the young people, I love this because it's very intergenerational and
Mm-hmm.
multicultural. We get students as young, well, we get very young students, and we say, if you're bringing in the babies, mom and dad do this with your kid, right? So that you're learning as well. But
Right.
when we get the teenagers up to 30 years old, they have the same design aesthetic. They love old fashioned.
Yes.
They love Little House on the Prairie. They love calico prints. They love things that a lot of our 80-year-olds have like, I've been there, done that.
Right.
The kids are just there's this resurgence in this interest in making with their hands, learning something, but also they don't have access to those kinds of memories because their grandparents are younger. So
Right.
they really are just looking for that sort of nostalgic
Yes.
generation, the old times, the kinds of conversations that they have. They really are hungry for it and they are coming in all the time, all the time. And we get a lot of students from the universities. We do mending stations there once a
Oh.
month. So we help them, teach them how to mend. We mend their clothes for them and then invite them to come back to the shop and help us quilt.
Oh, wow. I wish I were closer. I would love
I
to be
wish you
dropping
were
in there. That would be
too.
so fun. And it is what I get lonely for sometimes. All of our chapters do it differently. And so some of the
Mm,
Binky Patrol chapters, they all get together once a month or every week, even some of them. And for our chapter, we don't. Everybody just drops
right.
stuff on my porch. And we have one big event a year. And I miss what I had when we were in Southern California when we started. And that was me and my two or three girlfriends getting together on the
Mm-hmm.
weekends and sitting outside
Mm-hmm.
sewing and
Mm-hmm.
laughing.
Right.
And so
You
I
must have been
still,
near
when
the
it's nice
beach.
weather, I still sew outside. And
Oh,
I
nice.
and I'm by my back fence, so if anybody's willing to talk to me, quilter, it's like, hey, come on in, let's visit. I pull them off the street,
Yes,
the
yes,
sidewalk,
yes, yes,
and I don't care because I love talking about watching them touch the fabric and play with it. It's like, oh wow.
yes.
And I love what you talked about though at the beginning, and that was an art quilt.
Mm,
And when
mm-hmm,
I first started doing things, there was a group of women, and we would get together on one night a week and we would do hand sewing projects.
mm-hmm.
So hand piecing.
Right,
And we all
okay,
different ones. And I had one in particular that I did though. I had an art gallery at the time, and there was an artist named Steve Hanks, and he did watercolor paintings.
okay.
And he had this one of a black and white cat sitting in a rocking chair with the sun coming in through the window. And I didn't know enough to know how not to do it. And so I found all these scraps and old table linens and shears and stuff to give it that sunlit look over the
Yes.
cat, and I recreated his painting in a
Oh,
block
wow.
about that
Yes,
big.
yes, yeah.
And I
That's
loved it.
that was my gateway into quilting. Honestly, if someone offered to teach me any other way, Miss Leslie knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to figure out what thing is going to catch her.
Yeah.
And fabric collage, just
Yes.
applique, just
Applique.
using
I
lots of
like
fun.
applique. And I did a you've probably done this before too. I took a photo. It was a site like a cityscape
Mm-hmm.
from outside of a window of a place that a friend of ours let us stay at his home in Toronto, which was on, like the 15th floor or something of this big building. And you could see all the skyscrapers around and the sky and the park. And I took a photo and I made that into a quilt to say thank you
Right.
to him with all
Oh,
the stories like pieced for
yes.
every story of every building near his house.
Right. Oh, nice.
And so I just blew up the photo big at,
Yeah.
at FedEx and I laid it down on paper and that became my on fabric and that became my pattern.
Wow. And I encourage folks to use all kinds of things. We get so many
Yes.
materials in, and there was a time where we would uh only take cotton because we were focused on cotton. And I remember thinking like, but no, I love using lots of shiny stuff.
Yes.
So our operation turned into not just the workshops, but now we have a fabric thrift store because we receive so many donations and not everything is used in our quilting. So we get to have fabrics that folks would use for garments or for
Yeah.
upholstery. And in addition to quilting cotton, and everything is just $3 a yard because we don't want to hold it or hoard it. We want you to
No.
take it home.
Now, when we first started Binky Patrol, there were three or four clothing manufacturers. One of them was True Grit. They're some
Hmm.
expensive now because they were made locally in California at the time.
Hmm.
BB Dakota, another one, made it locally in the time. But there were several, and they gave us so much fabric we had to get a storage unit.
Yeah.
And I needed cottons and things. And so I had a woman who made designer clothes down in Dana Point, and she said, I'll trade you. I have a lot of cottons that I won't use, and I will trade you if you let me go get the stuff you can't use. So she
Wow.
took all the shears and she would hand dye it and do these
Yeah.
beautiful sarongs and things from it and
Right.
made
Wow.
the most beautiful clothing. And so that it was just such a wonderful swap and it kept her busy. And then she
Yeah.
also made me a whole bunch of clothes too. And so that developed
Sure.
that's now a 30-year relationship
That's
where she makes
awesome.
most of the things that I wear, especially my pants and skirts. It's of all the stretchy knits that nobody ever wants to sew.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. But I'll tell you, what we've been doing is it's just amazing how things have grown because we would have someone come in who was a student, but who knew how to make clothes. And one day she came in and she had an apron on, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, I want an apron dress like that." And then she said, "I could teach you." And so we start a class, and then the class we have the fabric, which is like the lightweight upholstery fabric, and that's what
Yes.
we're going to use. We're going to use these things. And then got a grant to be able to pay the teachers who were previously volunteering so that they could sort of like this was not much, but a little bit of a reward for all the time that you've put
Yeah.
in. And you're not a nationally known or critically acclaimed teacher, and you've gone to every university, but you're a local person who does something really well, and you're able to pass on your this ancestral knowledge to the next generation. So
That
it's
is
really
so
incredible.
cool.
We
Oh, I
love it.
love
We
it.
love it.
I love all the grants you've been able to get, and it doesn't take a ton, but
Right.
you do want to keep it afloat and to keep it growing with new ideas because the ideas turn over. Sometimes they work for a while and then a few years later they don't because there are
Exactly.
trends and there are trends in society and everyday events and national everything has an effect on what we do with our spare time and our spare money.
Exactly. And I'll tell you this, for the past, I want to say almost 2 years, it's actually been the fabric thrift store that's been the most beneficial. So when the grants are a little, scarce, a little
Hmm.
light,
Yeah.
the fabric thrift store. And again, we learned if we keep our prices in some ridiculous rate, like we said, $3 a yard, or we
Right.
do like fill a bag for $15, it
Yeah.
keeps the flow going. And it keeps people saying, you know what, I know of this place, we should go there. And it takes away the anxiety of cutting into some really expensive fabric. And we get some really, really nice things like Dupioni silk and linen and wool and
Ooh.
really beautiful things. And if you come at the right time, you might be able to nab that at a really affordable price. So I think it's a combination of things, as you know, managing a nonprofit, I think one of the challenges is getting people to understand that it has to still run as a business.
Yes.
It's not just everything is, because of goodwill. We're doing it for that reason. And there are people who get involved because of that. But we still have to pay regular rent. We still have to pay insurance. We still have to pay, none of these business to business relationships are looking at it and saying, oh, we'll just give it to them. Like we still have to work really hard,
Right.
find ways to raise funds, and the fabric thrift store is one of them, and then we do other kinds of campaigns throughout the year to do that. But it's a
Well, I look
constant.
at, I mean, our biggest expense is our CPA
Hmm.
to get our taxes done to help with accounting because that is not my skill.
Right.
That is our biggest expense.
And it's worth it. It's worth it
Oh,
to
it
make.
has to, it is.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that. But those are just the basic because nobody for us, nobody's paid. But it's the postage, the printing, the shipping, the storage unit, the PO
Right.
box, and the CPA and some software. Because we have to
Right.
software subscriptions to be able to host things, to be able
Right.
to use things, all the Adobe suite, all those things. And it does add up, even through now you know about TechSoup, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure because that
Thank you.
yeah, TechSoup's a big help.
It certainly is. We use a lot of programs through TechSoup.
Yep. And they have equipment too. They have,
Hmm.
computers and things and laptops and all that. But I really appreciate their availability as well.
They, when you first get into this and you don't really know what you're doing, there are avenues and there are resources out here for nonprofit organizations and arts organizations. I feel like people, we kind of find each other,
Hmm.
when they really are attracted to the mission, but also to the craft of quilting and the being in community and learning from each other. And I always say, we're not all experts, but we know a little something. And with all of us together, we can kind of figure out whatever it
Right.
is. And every day is different. And there's something really special about our biggest expense, which is the brick and mortar, having an
Right.
actual space where people come, but it's so worth it because that's what people want. They want to find they call it a third place. Have you heard of that term?
No.
A third space or third place is basically a place that's not home and that's not work. And it used to be for some, it may have been the bar. Or for some, it might be church. And for
Right.
some, it would have been maybe a quilting bee at someone's house.
Right.
But now we live in a world or society where we're so detached from the things that made us whole as a community that, they're searching for these things, yearning for a space where they can come. And so that's what it is. And it's not a place that, you've got to spend a lot of money,
No.
you know,
It's community. It's where
it's just community.
and it's choice. It's what aligns
Mhm.
with your heart. There's no obligation.
Right. Exactly.
It's where you go to
Exactly.
get filled up. So I get that. I love that idea. I'm wondering too, we set up drop off locations and chapters and stuff everywhere. I would love to set you up on our website as a drop off location if people want to make blankets
Okay.
and
Yeah.
they could bring them to your place, your brick and mortar, and just
Yeah.
drop them off.
We do our donations at least 4 to 5 times a year.
Okay.
So we have a stack of quilts that the students make. And what I always say, when it reaches the ceiling, then we know it's time for delivery. And we donate to, I mean, every kind of organization that you can imagine. One of the biggest is Hope the Mission. And they have family shelters throughout Southern California,
Hmm.
and we donate quilts to families in family shelters. And they're usually just a symbol of hope and encouragement. Just, during this tough
Fantastic.
time, folks in shelters tend to get the bare minimum. They get a shelter, they get a place,
Right.
food, clothing. And so we would like to give something that's just a little extra. It's not the warmest, it's not the biggest, but it is something that, reminds you that there is something good in this world and something to look forward to when you get into
Yes.
your home.
Yep. And that's how we are. It's a reminder that they matter,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
everybody matters and we see you and you are worthy of the time we have spent on this, that
Yeah.
we see you. So great. You'll send me an email of what you want me to put on your chapter page, and I'll put that there and get you all set up.
Very
Because
nice.
I would love to have another location in that area. What happens on our drop-off locations is you get listed on our website under our chapters, and we say this is a drop-off location sponsored by Quilting for Community. Your logo would go there, a link to your website, and an address and everything. Feel free to drop off. These are the hours. This is where it is. And
Gotcha.
this is the point person. Then I would give you a Binky Patrol email that you can set up to just forward to whatever you want,
Okay.
so that you don't have to worry about it tangling with all your other stuff. You can put a filter on your email and say,
Okay. Yep.
okay, anything Binky goes in the folder and I'll check it, once a day or,
Right.
whatever.
And then when we make our donations, then we
They
would
just
just
go.
include. Okay,
Yeah.
great. That's perfect.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
just another resource for people to be able to give to you.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. We'd love
You
to.
Oh, cool. That would be great. We would love to have that. And then we will get this episode up soon on binkypatrol.show. Everybody, this has been just a delightful visit and get you all thinking how you can build community. It doesn't have to be big or huge or expensive. It can just be a curiosity and something that warms your heart, that says, I think I want to do more of this. And maybe
Yeah.
there's some other people that want to do some more of that or learn how, or that they'll catch on and want to do it with you. So put it out there. It doesn't hurt to try it. Like she said, like Liz said, you just experiment. See how it goes. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to make some new friends. Oh, bummer.
Lots of new friends. You'll be surprised how many people want to do that thing that you're thinking about.
Liz, how can everybody find you?
Oh, they can find us on social media, and Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Quilting for Community. And
Great.
then our website, www.quiltingforcommunity.org.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being my guest and for booking the time with me. This has been a joy. I loved hearing your story.
Thank you. So good to be here.